Hi, Keith here from Academy Bass. Today I'm looking at a minor pentatonic riff that I'm going to show you how to develop across the fingerboard. It's nice and easy to play, and it's going to give you a ton of ideas to use in your own playing. So I'm using the Minor Pentatonic Scale today, and if you already know the Minor Pentatonic Scale and you can play it in a bunch of different places across the fingerboard, you might want to move on to the next part of the lesson using the timestamp. The beauty of the Minor Pentatonic Scale is that it's the perfect fit to use to play over any minor chord in any musical situation, and as long as you're playing notes that are within the scale, whatever you play will fit and will sound good, and that's why it's so widely used in pretty much every style of music. Before I get into this, there's a completely free PDF for this lesson. It's got everything in that I'm going to be looking at, fully notated in both standard notation and tab, and I've also included the backing tracks that I'm using in this lesson as part of that download too, so the link to that's posted below. Make sure you grab a copy of that. If you do enjoy this lesson, don't forget to give me a shout out and let me know in the comments, and also feel free to like the video and support the channel by subscribing. I'm going to start by playing a C minor pentatonic scale, starting from C here at the 3rd fret of the A string. Then we've got E flat at the 6th fret, I'm playing that with my little finger. Then it's on to F at the 3rd fret of the D string, and I'm playing that with my 1st finger. Then it's G at the 5th fret, and I'm playing that with my 3rd finger. Then we're on to B flat at the 3rd fret of the G string, I'm playing that with my 1st finger. And then finally C at the 5th fret of the G string, and I'm playing that with my 3rd finger. You can also use an ever so slightly different fingering for this scale pattern too. This time I'm going to use my little finger to play G and C. I tend to move between both depending on what I'm playing. Now that's a really nice pattern that takes us across the strings, but there's another pattern that takes us in a slightly different direction. Still starts from C at the 3rd fret of the A string. Now you could start with your 3rd finger. I prefer to start with my little finger. So we've got C, then it's E flat at the 1st fret of the D string, F, G, B flat and C. So we've got the same scale played in two slightly different ways, and when I get into showing you the riff and also how to develop it, hopefully you'll get to see and hear just how useful that can be. The next thing that I'm going to do is extend the range of what we're playing here, because it's really good practice to extend the range of whatever you play on the bass, because that gives you access to the maximum amount of notes possible in any one position without having to move around the instrument. So I'm going to start using the first scale pattern, and from this C root note I'm going to take it down to B flat here at the 6th fret of the E string. Then we've got G at the 3rd fret and F at the 1st fret. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing now with the second scale pattern. So from this C root note I'm going to take it down to B flat, this time at the 1st fret of the A string. Then we've got G and F. So we've got exactly the same notes played in two different ways. You can also play these scale patterns in a different position on the fingerboard. So this time I'm going to start from C at the 8th fret of the E string. So here's the first scale pattern. And again I'm going to extend this. This time from this C root note I'm going to move down to B flat 2 frets below. And from this C note here at the 10th fret of the D string I'm going to move up to E flat, F and G. Now all of these notes are under the hand, which is why they work so well. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing now with the second scale pattern. Now from this C root note I'm going to take in B flat 2 frets below. And from this C again I'm going to take in E flat, F and G. So again we've got the same notes played in two slightly different ways. And using the first scale pattern you can also play a 2-octave scale. So with just these two scale patterns we've pretty much covered the entire neck, and you can almost play them as one scale. Don't worry if you couldn't follow that as I was playing it, because it's in the PDF. Now I'm going to show you the riff that we're going to work on and develop. Now You might well be thinking that that really doesn't look like it's got anything to do with any of the scale patterns that we played so far, but bear with me and let's learn it first. So we're starting from C here at the 3rd fret of the A string, then I'm moving my hand over D at the 5th fret, but I'm playing a muted note, so I'm just lifting my finger off the string. Then I'm going to play that D. Now D isn't in the minor pentatonic scale, it is in the natural minor scale. It's also in the Dorian mode. And that D is the 2nd or the 9th of C, and that's a great note to use over any minor chord. It's a really sweet sound. I like the sound of it, and that's why I've chosen to use it. So we've got C, muted note, then we're playing the D, then we're hammering on to E flat. Then we jump up to C here at the 5th fret of the G string. Then it's on to B flat, and here we're at the 8th fret of the D string. Now I instinctively want to give that B flat a little bit of juice, so I'm using some vibrato. Now you can also play this riff without the muted note if you find it easier, so you could just play. It's entirely up to you. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at how many different ways we can play this same riff. So it's very similar this, but the end's slightly different. So again we've got C, muted note over D, hammering on to E flat, and from this C we're sliding down 2 frets to B flat, so now we're into the 1st scale pattern. So we've got the same riff played 2 different ways, but with 2 ever so slightly different articulations. Bit of vibrato, and now a slide. And I'm going to use a 3rd variation now, but this time I'm going to use the 2nd scale pattern. So I'm going to play C, open D, E flat, C and B flat, but of course I'm going to use some different articulations. This time I'm playing C from the open D and hammering onto E flat, sliding into C and then pulling off onto B flat. So again, some different articulations. Vibrato, slide, hammer on, slide and a pull off. And in this final example I'm going to use some octave displacement. So I'm going to play C, open D, hammer on to E flat, come back down to the C root note and B flat. So we've got 4 different ways of playing the same riff. Now let's have a quick listen to them and hear what they sound like in context. Each one of those sounded really good, and whilst they're subtly different from each other, I like the character of them all. I'm going to take each one now and develop it even further, and I'm going to make sure that I keep my hand in a fixed position here, because that means all of the notes that I'm going to be using will fall comfortably under my fingers. This is what I played the first time. So I played the original motif all the way up to B flat here at the 8th fret of the D string. Then I played 2 muted notes on the D string over this B flat, even though I've got all of my fingers laid across the strings. That's just to reduce the fact that I might catch a harmonic. Then we've got a muted note on the A string, and again I'm targeting E flat here at the 6th fret, even though I've got all of my fingers laid across the strings. Then I'm playing G at the 5th fret of the D string, B flat at the 8th fret, and then it's E flat at the 6th fret of the A string. And that's an E flat major chord arpeggio, or the top part of a C minor 7 chord arpeggio, and that's the chord that we're playing over: C, E flat, G, B flat, or C, E flat, G, B flat. And that's why the line sounds so good. Now, don't worry if you're not confident playing muted notes, because you can play this line without the muted notes and it's still going to sound good. Now on to the second line. And don't forget, we're into the first minor pentatonic scale pattern here. So again, I'm using a muted note. I'm playing that muted note on the D string over F here at the 3rd fret. And from there I'm playing the F and then hammering onto G at the 5th fret. And then I'm doing exactly the same thing on the G string. Playing a muted note over B flat at the 3rd fret, playing the B flat and hammering onto C, but I'm using a slightly different rhythm. The third time we're into this second minor pentatonic scale pattern. And again I'm using this muted motif, so I'm playing a muted F on the D string, playing the F and then hammering onto the G at the 5th fret. But then I'm playing a B flat octave in reverse. Now all of these lines have been designed so that whatever I'm playing is leading back into the root note of the motif, so that we've got a nice strong line. And finally we've got this. So again we've got some muting. So from this B flat at the 1st fret of the A string, we've got 2 muted notes there. F, hammering onto G, B flat and back to G. So all 4 lines now. Second one. Third one. And the 4th one. Now I'm going to move everything further up the fingerboard and I'm going to develop these lines even more. I'm going to be playing as if I was playing in context of playing a bass line within the song. We're in the area of the 8th fret of the E string and right in the position of both of the extended minor pentatonic scale patterns. So this should give us a ton of great ideas. Whilst that was largely repetitive, there were quite a few different elements to it. So I started off with the original motif here. Then jumped up to the 8th fret of the A string and I played a muted note over the F. Played the F and hammered onto G at the 10th fret and did exactly the same thing on the D string. Played a muted note over B flat, played the B flat and hammered onto C. And I played that exact same thing a little bit earlier on, down here. So from this C, rather than jump all the way back down to here to start the riff again, I jumped down an octave. And I started from the 8th fret of the E string, then jumped straight back into the riff. Then I played this little bluesy line, so we've got F at the 8th fret of the A string, hammered onto G, B flat, 8th fret of the D string, E flat, 8th fret of the G string, B natural, which is the major 7 of the C, so we're at the 9th fret of the D string, and then back into C, the 10th fret. Then it's back into muted note over E flat, G, B flat, C, E flat and back into C. So we've got and this last time B flat, hammering onto C, E flat, back to C, F at the 10th fret of the G string, back to C, 10th fret of the D string, F sharp, and G. bluesy line, and it takes in that flattened fifth, which is the F sharp or the G flat, so it turns this minor pentatonic scale into a blues scale. Now, because I'm at this G at the 12th fret, again, rather than jump all the way back down, I jump to here, I jump to C at the 10th fret of the D string to start the riff. And from there, repeated the first line, and the second, and the third, and the last time, played this little line. So B flat to C to E flat to C, and from this C slid up to E flat at the 13th fret of the D string, B flat 15th fret of the G string, G 12th fret, back down to E flat 13th fret of the D string, C, and that again is an E flat major arpeggio, or the top part of the C minor 7 arpeggio. So previously we played G, B flat and E, and now we're E flat, G, B flat and E flat, and now we're playing B flat, G and E flat. So it's an alternative way of using an arpeggio creatively within the bass line. So here's the full line really slowly. The Minor Pentatonic Scale is a great tool. It's brilliant to use in your bass lines, and it's equally good to use if you want to play something a little bit more interesting too. And this is a really good way to work on it. In fact, you could apply this process to absolutely anything that you wanted to work on and practice. I really do hope you've enjoyed the lesson. If you have, give me a shout out and let me know in the comments. Don't forget to grab the PDF. The link to that is posted below. And feel free to like the video and support the channel by subscribing. Thanks for joining me. Look forward to seeing you again. And in the meantime, happy practicing.